On 5 News, doctors divided. Warnings that hospitals will struggle as senior medics criticise plans for a 5-day walkout by their junior colleagues. Also, anger as the owner of one of the country's worst performing rail services announces a huge profit. Go Ahead, which owns Southern Rail, made nearly £100 million, leaving long-suffering passengers furious. Ticked off how our much-loved pets might be carrying a less than welcome guest into our homes. Setting off on active service, the Royal Navy destroyer taking on so-called Islamic State. And Noah's on the up, Amelia's top for girls. So what's in a name?
Allo Michelangelo Ziolo. So it slightly rings slightly in Italian, but...
That is very cool. I mean, yeah. Michelangelo, that is quite a lot to live up to, that name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbett. It is just 10 days until junior doctors across England begin one of a series of 5-day strikes, forcing tens of thousands of procedures to be cancelled. Today, they've been criticised by some of the country's leading medics. The Academy of Medical Royal Colleges has called the walkouts disproportionate, saying the short notice will cause real problems for hospitals and their patients. One junior doctor has told us they've been left with no choice, as our health correspondent Catherine Jones explains.
The first 5-day strike begins on September the 12th, the second after just 18 days respite. Then 2 more week-long walkouts in November and December. By any measure, a punishing schedule of strike action escalating the worst dispute in the history of the NHS.
There would usually be about 6 working at the time.
Lamise is due on shift every day of the first strike. Instead, she'll be on the picket line.
What are the consultants saying who will have to cover you?
They're actually in favour of what we're doing because we stand as one. I can understand members of the public becoming angry about this, but actually it's not small points that we're trying to argue against. We're really being pushed into a corner, which is why we are following this action. The reason we took 3 years to negotiate without any strike action is because we wanted to be understanding and we wanted to come to agreed terms. But when no one listens to you and you're backed into a corner, I mean, what else are we left with?
Now, though, the top ranks of her profession have waded in. The Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, representing more than 20 eminent health bodies, has stated it's disappointed at the prospect of strikes, describing them as not proportionate. However, since this statement's issue, 5 of these organisations have distanced themselves from the Academy's stance.
Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
If all 4 strikes go ahead, the Department of Health estimates more than 100,000 operations and 1 million hospital appointments will be postponed. Patients' representatives have appealed to the Prime Minister to intervene, to pause the whole process.
We would like her to do what she did with Hinkley Point, for example, and take time to think about it, look at it in real detail and find out from patients and perhaps other members of staff in the health service what needs to be done to have a really good look. But the immediate problem is for her to step in and stop this, pause it.
The BMA says it's fighting to save the NHS. Its opponents say the union's strikes will do too much harm to a service under extreme pressure. While the arguments continue, there are only 10 days for hospitals to plan and prepare.
Cathy, it's pretty clear there's a lot of disagreement between senior and junior doctors about this strike.
Also between juniors and juniors. I actually think the opposition to the contract among the junior profession is as strong as ever, but there is clear worry from certain members about the impact of the BMA's method to push their opposition to the contract, these 5-day-long strikes. There's much talk, for example, of what alternatives they could have tried. For example, what about a work to rule, everyone refusing to do overtime, to kind of bring the focus back to the kind of issues that they're complaining about and to try and highlight why they feel so strongly. Interestingly, though, I think they are drawing strength from another part of their profession, from the consultants directly above them. A lot of juniors saying to me, the consultants are saying, go on, go for it. I know it'll be hard work for us, it'll be really tough, but you are fighting a fight that we want you to, and if not, we'll be next, because it's our contract that's negotiated after this one.
Oh, worth noting. Cathy, thanks. Now, for months, passengers using Southern Rail have put up with no end of disruption, and now one of the companies that operates the franchise has announced its financial results a big rise in profits to nearly £100 million. It comes just a day after government ministers promised £20 million of taxpayers' money to help improve their services. So what do the long-suffering commuters make of that? Layla Hayes has been finding out.
Delays, cancellations and strikes. Months of travel chaos at Southern Rail have led to misery for commuters. Sean Ruddy says it's now affecting his health.
It's just a nightmare like every day. I mean, I get to work I'm not one like a person to be down, but I get to work actually depressed. Like yesterday I was like an hour late for work. I've just had like a baby a few months ago as well, so I'm getting home every late. I don't really get to see my child and my missus as well, so it's just like, yeah, it's just depressing really.
The chaos has been caused by a bitter dispute with unions over the role of guards and staff shortages. On Thursday, the government pledged £20 million to sort out the problems, which seem to be getting worse. In July, Southern introduced an emergency timetable, cancelling 341 trains a day. From next week, many trains will be reintroduced, but there will also be another 2 days of strikes, the fifth walkout since April. Meanwhile, profits of Southern Rail's co-owner Go Ahead have risen by more than a quarter to almost £100 million.
They're awash with money, they're hoarding it, they're giving it to their shareholders, but one thing they're not doing is looking after the passengers, and that's an absolute disgrace, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is something that the government should look at and see whether or not they should continue with the franchise.
Go Ahead, who jointly run the Southern Rail franchise, say they're introducing new trains to improve services. Their chief executive, who's turned down a pay rise and bonus, said in a statement, "During this period of change, Southern services have been disrupted by restricted network capacity, strike action and increased levels of absence. We apologise to the people whose lives have been affected during this time." But many commuters have had enough.
I know they're striking again next week. I'm going to have to take 2 days off work because I can't get to work.
It's affecting a lot of people's lives, and we need to get it sorted.
The company that runs Southern says they're doing their best. Passengers just want things to get better. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
A serving Royal Marine has been charged with terrorism offences related to Northern Ireland. Kieran Maxwell is accused of creating and maintaining explosive devices. He was arrested in Somerset last week after searches in Devon and also in Larne. A man's appeared in court charged over the deaths of 10-year-old Micaiah McDermott and his aunt Rosie Cooper. They were struck by a car that was being chased by police in south-east London on Wednesday afternoon. And a man accused of murdering banker Oliver Dearlove at the weekend has also appeared in court. 30-year-old Oliver was reportedly killed by a single punch as he waited for a taxi with friends in Blackheath. They were harrowing photos from the shores of Turkey that caused outrage around the world. A year ago today, we saw pictures of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi lying lifeless on a beach after the boat carrying him to Europe sank. It brought the refugee crisis into sharp focus and brought promises by governments to act. Today, campaigners and celebrities are calling on Britain to do more. A warning that Dominic Reynolds' report begins with a photo of Alan that you might find upsetting.
A limp little body lifted out of the waves. The image of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi on a Turkish beach was unforgettable. But a year after it shocked the world, Alan's aunt says our government has forgotten.
How can we close our door and heart to them?
Tima Kurdi says Alan's death looked like it would make countries like ours open up to refugees, but it hasn't happened.
Even politicians, they were moved by it. And finally, action were taken. They start to promise that they will do something to end the suffering. But for a few months, and after that, the situation is getting worse.
The boats have continued to come, and hundreds of children have ended up in Calais on Britain's doorstep. So today, some high-profile campaigners went to the Home Office's doorstep. They want the 387 children in Calais to come to Britain now.
I try to remain calm, but I am angry. I'm as angry as any mother would be when they see children being tormented.
These children have been through war.
Would you take them into your home?
I would. I don't think they'd be very happy in my home.
Why not?
Well, because my home's in an awful mess. But certainly, of course I would. I've got a spare bedroom.
Now, I want to share a story.
Speaker after speaker today has told human stories about children caught in this crisis. It's all in front of the building with the power to do something about it. For its part, the Home Office says they're talking to their international partners and the welfare of children is important. People here say they're not doing nearly enough. Charities say that means our government can't continue to turn its back.
It has the luxury of indifference at the moment. You know, by an accident of geography, the UK is placed at the far end of Europe. This, at the moment, is a problem that we've found all too easy to close our eyes and ears to and hope that it'll go away. Well, our numbers show it's absolutely not going away.
As the protesters sang, the Home Office said it's already doing a lot for unaccompanied migrant children. This group wants the government to change that tune and simply agree to do more. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News at the Home Office.
Still to come on the programme. How your dog could be bringing this unwelcome little guest into your home. Taking the fight to IS, 5 News meets the crew of HMS Daring. And the nation's favourite baby names. Find out what's hot and what's not. All that and more after the break. Welcome back, you're watching 5 News. Dog owners have been warned to check their animals for ticks after the biggest research of its kind found a third of dogs in the UK could be carrying them. The tiny creatures can transmit a range of diseases, including Lyme disease, which has serious and sometimes fatal consequences. Surprisingly, dogs are just as likely to pick up ticks in urban areas as they are in the countryside. Frankie McCamley has more.
Dog owners love their pets, but little do they know they could be carrying ticks, an insect which can be very dangerous to humans. Sarah was bitten by a tick 5 years ago.
6 weeks later, I started developing very odd symptoms, so burning pain in my hands and joints, profound fatigue, confusion, typing the wrong thing.
She was later told she had Lyme disease as a result of the bite.
I was bedbound, I couldn't move, I was in agony. I had no idea of how painful Lyme disease is, how it affects so many parts of your body, and I thought I would die, and I planned my funeral with my husband.
Sarah is now recovering but wants to raise awareness of the dangers surrounding the insect after a study which analysed nearly 15,000 dogs found almost a third were carrying a tick.
Ticks are evenly distributed all across the UK, from the very north of Scotland all the way down to the southeast and the southwest. So wherever you are in the UK, ticks are living there. The second interesting thing is that I think many people would have presumed that they were a rural animal, out in the countryside, but we found as many in our towns and cities as we did in the countryside.
And these are the most common type of ticks usually found on dogs. They have special claws that they use to hook on to a dog's fur. It's thought climate change and an increase in animals carrying ticks have contributed to the increase. So vets are urging people to check their pets.
So the most likely place for you to pick up ticks is around his nose, behind his ears and underneath his neck.
Say if you find a lump, then what do you do?
Find your lump, part the fur, and then you use the tick hook and scoop it underneath the tick, twist and pull.
And once removed, the advice is to check yourselves before heading back into the great British countryside. Frankie McCamley, 5 News.
Now, Samsung has been forced to stop the sale of its latest smartphone after some of them reportedly exploded while charging. The Galaxy Note 7 was supposed to be on the shelves for customers today, although it is already on sale in some other countries. It's ordered a recall of the devices after 35 cases of batteries exploding. The SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, has launched what she's called a new conversation on Scottish independence. She's asking for views on Europe, Brexit and independence via survey and town hall meetings across Scotland. She's argued that the Leave vote and the turmoil surrounding Labour have changed the political landscape. And Donald Trump's wife, Melania, is suing the Daily Mail for claiming she was an escort in the 1990s. She filed a lawsuit against the newspaper and a blogger, saying the statements are 100% false and damage her personal and professional reputation. One of the Navy's most state-of-the-art warships has set sail from Portsmouth to help in the fight against so-called Islamic State. HMS Daring and its crew of nearly 200 will spend nearly 2 months protecting US aircraft carriers as they launch missiles against IS in Syria and in Iraq. Waving them off, friends, family and other well-wishers, and Simon Vigo was amongst them as well.
Setting sail for the Arabian Gulf, HMS Daring is off to support US Navy aircraft carriers in their strikes against so-called Islamic State. There are some anxieties, but mostly excitement.
My mum had a bit of an emotional time when I left her the other day. Now I think they're excited. They know this is what I want to do. They know I didn't want to be sat behind a desk.
Everyone's looking forward to it. You know, there's a couple of lads in the team who haven't deployed at all yet. So it's a good opportunity to get a little bit of experience in for most of the lads.
Any butterflies in the stomach?
No.
It's not all been plain sailing, though. Daring is one of 6 Type 45 destroyers, and they are the Royal Navy's new and shiny ships. However, they've been plagued with problems with their hybrid power systems. To cut a long and expensive story short, they keep breaking down. The commander of the vessel told me he is confident. Are you going to get there? There have been big problems with the engines. Are you going to get there?
Since 2014, there's been a lot of interest in the propulsion plant within the Type 45s. There's a recognition that the propulsion plant is not as reliable and not demonstrating the availability we would like to have seen. A lot of money was committed in the last defence review to overcome that.
The round tower in Old Portsmouth has been the family's vantage point down the centuries. The Hanlons from Liverpool were looking out for 20-year-old able rating Amy.
Excited and nervous. This is my first ship, my first deployment, so I'm excited to see what it brings, but nervous to get off, nervous to go. But I am ready to go now.
And how are your family?
Upset, but they know this is what I joined to do.
Amy's mum told me she had to be here to wave off her girl.
It's very hard to watch her because they've never been apart from me, so, I mean, I seen her last night, we went and had something to eat with her last night, and even then she said, don't cry, and I was like, go away now. Let me have me a minute, and then off you go. So, but she's okay.
She'll be all right.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
Amy and her shipmates now have 9 months of a life on the ocean wave. It's not going to be easy, but it's always harder for those they've left behind. Simon Viger, 5 News, Portsmouth.
Now, what do Roma, Madison, Carter and Jackson, with an X, all have in common? The answer, they are all new entries in the top 100 baby names in England and Wales. At the top for boys is Oliver, for girls it's Amelia. So how do mums and dads these days decide what to call their children? Ruth, which is number 455 on the list, has been finding out.
A baby's name says so much, not just about who we are, but about the era we're living in. So while it's unlikely that there's a Tracy or a Gavin amongst this lot, there might well be a Mia or a Charlie. This is Princess and her newborn baby daughter.
I decided to call her Aurelia. I think it's a very pretty name.
Yes.
It means golden.
Wow.
And I couldn't think of a better name to see the daughter of a princess.
But what were last year's favourite names for newborns? Well, for the 5th year running, Amelia topped the list for girls, with more than 5,000 babies given that name. And the names Isla and Ava have seen a huge jump in popularity, with both soaring into the top 10. When it comes to boys' names, nearly 7,000 babies were named Oliver, top favourite for the 3rd year running. Although in the West Midlands and London, Mohammed is now the top boy's name. And the names Noah and Oscar have jumped more than 40 places. But 1 in 5 go on to regret their choices.
We do have members sometimes telling us that they have changed their babies' names after a month, 6 months, or even further on than that. Maybe because the name is common or because the name's unpronounceable sometimes. Or in some instances, for whatever reason, the child just doesn't fit the name.
It's not a decision to take lightly.
So this little beauty hasn't even got a name yet.
Maybe she could be an Eliza? No, don't like that? Or an Eleanor? A Maya? So difficult.
But what about this for a name? Arlo Michelangelo.
Italians pronounce it slightly differently, so it'd be Arlo Michelangelo Ziola. So it slightly rings slightly different in Italian, but...
That is very cool. I mean, Michelangelo, that is quite a lot to live up to, that name, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got the Star Wars theme running through the name, so they're going to kill me for saying this, but I've got a daughter named Leah. I've got a son named Jake, but his middle name's Lucas. And Isabella is the next one in line with Rey from The Force Awakens. We could have chosen worse names, I guess, like Chewbacca or Yoda.
And thank goodness you didn't. Ah, look, it's a boy. Oh, no, it isn't, it's a girl. Whatever name you choose for them, make sure it's one that they can live with too. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
I like that Star Wars theme, Darth or Jar Jar maybe. That's it for now, though. I'll be back at 6:30 when we'll be discussing the problems with the new Samsung smartphone. What impact will it have on the company's global battle with its rival Apple, also set to announce a new phone? And after all that talk of baby names, could this be the oldest person in the world? We'll tell you about the man who claims to be 145 years old, and he says he's got the documents to prove it. The secret of his old age might surprise you as well. Find that out at 6:30 on 5 News tonight. Kirsty's got the weather next. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.